Most traders spend hours jumping between platforms, copy and pasting data, and still end up losing money. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to build your own personal equity research desk by combining TradingView's AI with Claude's Fable 5 model. This is a breakdown of the personal equity research prompt just to help you visually understand kind of how I approached building out this prompt. Now, the full prompt will be available for free in the description below, just like any other assets that I build. Starting off with phase one, which is going to be utilizing TradingView's AI to build a screener and sort of analyze these sectors. Now, the more that I've tested TradingView's AI, the more that I realize that its strong points are kind of in creating your watch list, using it as education to better understand how it marks out certain levels, understand how certain indicators are used and in what environments, and also for just setting alerts automatically, pulling up indicators on your chart. But where I've seen it really lack compared to other LLMs, and this is by a pretty big margin, is the fact that when you are prompting or trying to create custom prompts like I have done in the past using Claude, there are a lot of hiccups. There are multiple attempts. It keeps asking me the same questions over and over again. So for this kind of video, I'm going to focus on TradingView's AI strength and on Claude's strength. So once we have a list of stocks that we want to use, we're then going to take that and put it into the custom prompt in Claude, and it's going to give us a full fundamental analysis breakdown of each of these stocks. Starting off with a research dossier that is going to be a PDF document around 48 pages containing, for example, 5 tickers. And that number can be changed depending on how many you want to have yourself. The next phase is the actual dashboard. So that's going to be a visual representation. Like, the dashboard is fully interactive, and you can compare each of your assets together and see where the strengths and weaknesses are. The final phase is going to be the verdict. So this is where we take all of the comparisons and weigh it with a specific scorecard. As you can see down below, this is the weight we're going to use. So 20% for valuation, 20% for growth, 15% for profitability, 15% for balance sheet, 20% for moat, and then 10% for risk. And then once that's done, you have your specific scorecard weighing each of these stocks together. And at the end, it's going to give you sort of specific price levels to keep an eye on, which we're then going to put into TradingView's AI and then just set our alerts. Now let's get into the first step, which is using TradingView's AI to create our watch list. The watch list I have in particular in my mind is going to be the AI semiconductor industry. So we're going to say create a new watch list for all stocks in the AI semiconductor sector. Then add them to the watch list just in order of market cap. And there we have it. We have a list of 28 semiconductor stocks, all ranked in order of market cap. So it says it has created the watch list, but when I go over to my watch list, I can't see it here. So if that's the case, all you have to do is just refresh your window and it should pull up on your screen just as such. So you can see there are some flags, and that's simply because, I've had those on my own watch list and I've just flagged them based off of my own interest on my setups. But this is what you're going to get, is you're going to get your full watch list in order. So what I would do from here is, I have my own system when it comes to trading equities, sort of like a trend following system. So what I would do is just analyze each of these stocks myself based off of the price action patterns. But if I want to understand those stocks deeper from a fundamental perspective, as opposed to just a technical, then that's where, I lack as just an individual. But with the prompt that I've built, that actually solves that problem for me. This is the prompt that's going to be available for free in the description below. So what I've done is I'm just going to copy it completely. I'd recommend creating a new project on Claude. So I just named it Fundamental Analyst. I personally will be using Fable 5 when utilizing this prompt. So all you have to do is copy and paste it. So it says here, your tickers field is still the placeholder. So I need those before phase one. I can start. Now it just gives me in general some of the stocks that are already on my list that we created with TradingView's AI. So what I'm going to say is simply use these same ones as well to just kind of make the process a bit simpler. It also gives me 2 quick notes, which is that since my TradingView account is already connected here, it can pull the quotes and fundamentals, earning dates, and technicals directly from it, which is also one of the strong points when it comes to using TradingView's built-in AI, is because it has access to all of the chart history as well as the fundamental data. So here we have the data as of Tuesday, August 18th, 2026. So the day that I'm recording this video. You can see that we also have the 5 stocks that we just picked at the start, as well as all of the metrics and data that it's gathered on them. Now, when I'm just looking at these numbers, there isn't really much to go off of. I don't understand what a lot of these terms are. And if you are a beginner, then I expect you're in the same boat as me. So this is where the second phase comes into, where we're actually creating the dashboard that is not only fully interactive, but also helps you understand what each of these things are and how they impact a company. Data accuracy was also very important to me when developing this prompt, because I didn't want it to just kind of find random numbers and just put them in unless it was verified. So you'll see for some instances where it wasn't able to pull the accurate data, it will simply say unverified, as opposed to just simply guessing, which is something that isn't unheard of when it comes to these LLMs. Before we get to the dashboard, the prompt is first going to create a research dossier. All you have to do is click confirm, and it will start with phase 2. And here is our semiconductor sector research dossier, breaking down the 5 stocks that we chose at the start of the video. Chapter 0 explains to us how to actually read the report. So every metric in this report is explained here once in plain English. If a number in a later chapter confuses you, come back to this page. One framing to hold throughout. A stock price tells you what you pay. These metrics help you judge what you get. The education aspect was one of the biggest things when it came to me kind of building out the prompt. Because as I mentioned, myself, I don't really have that sort of fundamental analysis education or can kind of read a company's report and understand what each of these aspects are. So this is also kind of just to help myself and you as well when it comes to wanting to understand deeper, how to analyze a company's financials. For each company that we chose, you have a dedicated chapter dedicated to it. Now, starting off for chapter 1, it's going over NVIDIA. Each company also has its sort of 60-second verdict. So just very briefly kind of summarizing everything just so you can kind of understand. And then it goes down into the business, what are they actually doing? The numbers of the company. So compared to what we had previously on Claude, which was just a bunch of numbers and one big table, this is actually visually more appealing. It actually tells us a description or goes into more detail for each of those numbers. It also gives us sort of a bull and bear case, but just remember that this isn't going to be something we directly action or, open a position solely because of the bull case or the bear case, right? This is more catered towards you developing a stronger fundamental analyst perspective when it comes to reviewing these companies. And at the end, you have a sort of final chapter, which is your sector overview and how the prices fit. So the value chain, who supplies whom, who competes with whom, and the biggest trends dividing everything. So at the start, it's breaking down all the companies individually, but a lot of these companies are actually kind of linked together. Some supply chips to other, some the design, for then with manufacturing. So kind of having a better picture on how everything is sort of linked helps you also with your research. Now that we've gone over the report, if we head back to Claude, you will say that now that the dossier is done, are you ready for your interactive dashboard? And this is the moment that I've been particularly waiting for. Now let's get into our custom dashboard. If you're enjoying the video so far, then don't forget to like and subscribe. The first thing that comes to my attention is that this dashboard, although it contains a lot of the same information as the first one that I created and that I previewed at the start of the video, because I wanted to show you when building this one, I'm showing you all the steps. There is no sort of copy and pasting. Now, because the first one is a lot easier to read, what I'm going to do is, for this video in particular, I'm going to go back to the first one that I created and use that as the example. Now, this is an issue that I have seen, when I'm kind of sharing the prompts that I've built or I'm sharing the assets. A lot of the things are dependent on your own system. So it's like we can have identical prompts, the same process, but the outcome is going to be different. If you prefer a certain style, then Claude is going to take that into consideration when building the dashboard. So for this case, I'm just going to go back to the first example that I showed at the start of the video, and we're going to run through that one. This is the first dashboard. As you can see, I'm simply pasting in the prompt. It was the same process. It's giving me the phase 1. Then we move on to the second phase where this also gave me a report. You can see again, it's a bit of a different style than the one that we just built ourselves. And then next you have the dashboard. So again, I just followed the same steps as you can see. In order to make it up to you, what I'll do is I'm also going to give the HTML file of this dashboard so that when you're creating your own dashboard with the prompt that I'm going to give in the description for free, you can ask Claude to replicate the style using this HTML dashboard format. Now let's actually go into the dashboard. So it's broken down in multiple sections, starting off with the overview, right? Is the overview for NVIDIA, TSM, MU, Avgo, and AMD. It also breaks down the weight scorecard. This is what we spoke about in the starter prompt, the percentage of weight that it uses per pillar that it's ranking against. Then you also have a little section at the bottom, which I added, which is sort of ask the analyst. So this is still running in Claude, but it's like if you have any other questions or want to do additional research regarding these. So in the case of why is AMD's score lower than the others, or compare TSM to Avgo, what's the bear case for Micron, you can do it directly within the dashboard itself. Next, let's move on to the valuation. So even if you don't understand what some of these metrics are, there is a section at the bottom telling you how to read the chart. Then if you hover over each of the histograms, it also tells you the sort of dollar paid per $1. So for example, for the forward PE, dollars paid per $1 of the next year's expected GAAP basis. So it tells you again, you can see manually here, the same thing for each of these sort of charts. You have the same thing for growth and values. It also tells you how to read the chart. You have the analyst section, moving on to the profitability, comparing all of the stocks together, the financial health. Then you have these 6 pillars. This is kind of one of my favorite ones, as you can just kind of hover over each of them and it shows you the weighing across of all of the 6 pillars that we used. Finishing off with the risk table, going over the volatility, short interest, and drawdown from 52-week high to the final data and flag. This is all the data that we gathered at the start of the prompt. And what you'll notice is the flagged and disputed figures, because I wanted all this data to be accurate. So if it isn't able to verify the data, it will simply tell you that it's unverified or that it is going to be flagged. And now for the final phase 4, which is the verdict, right? This is going to be the framework with the weighted scorecard, as well as giving us a thesis for it in less than 100 words. Then we're going to use that information and head back to TradingView's AI to analyze the chart and set our alerts. And here is our weighted scorecard. So we already saw the weighted scorecard on the dashboard, but what this is going to do is take it a step further and go behind the reasoning for each of the scores. Because remember, it's not just about getting the final result, but about understanding the process and developing that fundamental knowledge for ourselves to use in the future. So it breaks down the reasoning for each of the stocks. Then moving on to part B, which is going to be a written comparison. NVIDIA wins on profitability, mode depth, cash generation. It converts industry dominance into 119 billion of yearly free cash. Then it mentions TSM wins on quality per dollar, Avgo wins on revenue visibility, and then AMD wins on strategic positioning. So it's going to do the same thing for each of them. It mentions the one thing an investor in each name must watch, the portfolio construction education. And then you have your thesis card. This is like the 100-word summary going over each of the individual stocks. And moving on to the last and final part, which is the TradingView handoff. So in the prompt, I made it create a sort of mini prompt that we're going to hand off to TradingView with the specific levels that it's going to keep an eye on. And we're also going to have it set some alerts at the same time. So these are the individual prompts, and let's actually test them out. So we're just going to copy the one for NVIDIA, head back to the TradingView tab, and we're simply going to paste in that prompt in TradingView's AI chart copilot. And here is your final result. So we've taken that mini prompt that Claude generated for NVIDIA in particular, we've pasted it into TradingView's AI. It's now marked out, for example, the 52-week low, the fib cluster, the support, the 52-week high. So kind of marking out those key levels for us to keep an eye on. And we've also asked it at the same time to set alerts at those key levels. As always, all prompts that I used in this video will be shared for free in the description below. I'm also going to share with you the HTML of the dashboard that I created, as that had a much better style in the V1 compared to the one that I did live with you today. And if you found some value in the video, then don't forget to like and subscribe to show some support, and I'll catch you all in the next one.